Here's a poem for you by the German poet Rainer Maria Rilke, in English translation. Sometimes a man stands up during supper and walks outside and keeps on walking because of a church that stands somewhere in the east. And his children say blessings on him as if he were dead. And another man who remains inside his own house dies there amid the dishes and the glasses, so that his children have to go far out into the world to find that same church which he forgot. Hello, and welcome to the Crane Bag Podcast. I am Jay Leeming. Today we are going to be exploring a poem by the German poet Rainer Maria Rilke. A poem which asks questions of us about who we are, about what we want, about where it is that we feel most alive. Thank you for joining me. Let us begin. Let me run that poem by you one more time. Sometimes a man stands up during supper and walks outside and keeps on walking because of a church that stands somewhere in the east. And his children say blessings on him as if he were dead. And another man who remains inside his own house dies there amid the dishes and the glasses, so that his children have to go far out into the world to find that same church which he forgot. That's the poem. And what's going on here, huh? What's going on here? You got to stay home or you have to go out into the world. Is that what it says? Sometimes a man stands up during supper. Well, if we all wanted to do that, maybe so. Is home a jail? Is home inimical to the spiritual life? Is home a problem for those who wish to connect with the divine, who wish to hit the road and experience larger things which the dishes and the glasses cannot contain? I think that's the question this poem asks of us. But the poem, in some ways, is very certain of itself. It makes declarations, and that was an education to me, reading this poem. When I first encountered it, you could just say stuff. Sometimes an elephant eats a piece of cheese, you could say something like that. And then you can follow the logic of whatever that statement is. So a poem becomes a little world in which you can do thought experiments. I guess that's one way to look at it. It's a little parable. It's a place to state the equations of reality that you have discovered. Sometimes a man stands up during supper. It doesn't say, I wonder if. It doesn't say, maybe, it could be. The poem just says, this is what happens. This is a law, it seems to be saying. He gets up during supper, he goes outside, and he keeps on walking because of a church that stands somewhere in the east. Now, this poem, just so you know, comes from early in the career of Rainer Maria Rilke. the German-speaking and writing poet who was born in Prague, in what is now the Czech Republic. The East to him was Russia, which to him was a place somewhat like the Wild West for Americans, perhaps, a place of wide open spaces, of endless sky and endless land, endless possibility, and a place for Rilke of spiritual depth, a depth he did not perceive in the city of Prague where he was living, which he felt was small, provincial, hallways, boxes, streets, rules, laws. But out there in the East, you have spirituality, you have depth, you have beauty. So he was longing for that, and he wrote this poem after returning from a trip to Russia. So there's this immense longing in Rilke throughout his work. And we see that in this poem, where the man of the poem could just split, he could just leave home and head out towards this church in the East. But then what happens? Well, and his children say blessings on him as if he were dead. Now, is that a good thing or not? I mean, it starts to be kind of, unpleasant, unhappy. Dad went out there, but the kids are left being like, oh, Dad died. And then we get this other example, right? Another man who remains inside his own house dies there amid the dishes and the glasses, so that his children have to go far out into the world to find that same church which he forgot. So what's going on? It's like there's work to be done of the spirit, and someone in the family needs to do it. Maybe you've felt that in your own life. Maybe you've felt that in your own family. I know I have. It's the same with other things, emotions, anger, right? Something bad happens, and one way of looking at a family is, well, someone's got to get angry about it. Who's it going to be? It's a task which needs to be done, like doing the dishes. Who's going to take that on? I'm not sure that's always true, but it's an interesting way to look at a family. And then we could see, spiritual life. So who in the family is going to take that on? Of course, traditionally, we lived in a very gendered society, and the mother stays home, the husband goes out. And it is the role of each of them to do that. And, of course, nowadays we see that as oppressive. We see the lack of choice as oppressive. Depending on the culture in the past, folks saw that as oppressive or not. The woman stayed home with the kids because she could care for them. She's got breasts, after all. She can nourish the little ones. The dad is no help in that department. And so he goes out there to do everything that can be done if you do not have a child by your side, which could be gathering food. It could be whatever, I would mention the Tsutsuil Maya. And I would mention the folks living in what we call ancient Greece, about 1000 BC. Both cultures that were extremely gendered, but that was not seen as oppressive by the members of that culture, as far as we know. Basically, once you get gasoline, more choice becomes possible, and people look at things differently. Is that a lot to say? Well, it's something to figure out. I'm just saying it. I'll think about it and see what I think. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I don't know. Anyway, in this poem, which is compared to now, from quite a while ago, about 1906, this was written. That is the world. Dad goes out and he leaves. I guess I just mentioned that because I'm wondering if it matters that it's a man. Nowadays, we could rewrite it as a woman, and it would be very effective. Sometimes a woman stands up during supper and walks outside and keeps on walking because of a church that stands somewhere in the East. And her children say blessings upon her as if she were dead. And another woman who remains inside her own house dies there, inside the dishes and the glasses, so that her children have to go far out into the world to find that same church which she forgot. Do you feel how differently that lands when we change the genders? Fascinating. I don't know how it feels to you. To me, the liberation of the woman has a new force to it when she gets out of that house. And the children have a new grief to them when they say blessings upon her, as if she were dead. So I don't have an answer to this. But reading this poem, I am inspired by its merciless quality and the way it says, look, someone's got to live that spiritual life, one way or the other. And either way, death is involved. Either way, the man dies in the house, or it's as if he were dead, Which is better? Do we want to die in the house? Where does the divine live, right? Tennyson, in his remarkable poem Ulysses, that poem is written in the voice of Odysseus. And at one point he's describing his son Telemachus, and he says, "Most blameless is he, decent not to fail in offices of tenderness, and to pay meet observance to my household gods while I am gone." There's some Latinate word order there, twisting things around. But most blameless is he, decent not to fail in offices of tenderness, and to pay meet observance to my household gods while I am gone. So part of taking care of the house in that poem, in that vision, is to care for the household gods. That's Tennyson, the English poet, writing in Victorian times, but he is not off the mark at all in seeing that quality in Odysseus, in Telemachus, and in the Greek culture. For in fact, looking back at Homer, the houses did have household gods, and you would honor them with offerings to make sure that life went on. God lives on the mountain, in the river, in the fire, and the stars, but also there in the house. There was a Zeus of the storage jar, for instance. Every god in ancient Greece would have numerous aspects, Apollo, Athena, they all have different qualities, Zeus as well. And one of them is the Zeus of the storage jar, so where you keep your brown rice or your barley, that jar. He watches over it. So in this poem by Rilke, it's as if the divine cannot be contacted unless you leave the house. But in other traditions, the divine is present in the house, is there. And so, again, I don't know if it's a question of one or the other, but it might be a question of what sort of divine being are we talking about? If you were raised Christian, you might have encountered the Old Testament. And in the Old Testament, God, Yahweh, is a thunderstorm, is a fire. Moses goes up onto the mountain to contact God, right? That's where the conversation takes place. And it's fire, and it's lightning, and it's thunder, boom, So that's not something you want in your house. If God is a hurricane, if God is a volcano or a lightning flash, how can that live at the kitchen table? Well, it can't. The house would be destroyed. If the divine is a force which wrestles you to the ground, which nearly kills you, which leaves you flayed and splayed open and broken, and your life permanently changed, how can that happen in your house? How can that happen amid a structure designed for stability? Necessarily so. To keep children alive, to keep everyone alive, to keep mom and dad alive, and grandpa and grandma. Let's not send them to the old folks' home. The house is there to keep them all alive. But can that structure then shut out this divine, fiery energy? Rilke had a particularly intense spiritual life and vision of spirituality. He wrote the Duino elegies, beautiful poems that came rushing out of him when he was staying at the Duino castle. And in those poems, there are frequently angels appear, but they are not the usual angels we might conceive of in the Christian world, meaning beautiful, charming, harp-playing angels, right, with halos and white gowns, The angels in Rilke are terrifying, right? That's what he as famously says. Every angel is terrifying, he says, at the beginning of one of his elegies. He sees them as forces, almost like natural forces, that come to destroy you so as to open you up to new energies. And I read somewhere that he was influenced by Arabic and Muslim sources, in which angels frequently have that quality in the Quran and other spiritual writings, in poems as well. And in the biblical tradition, I'm not an expert, but there is the angel on the road to Damascus, that wrestles Jacob. That's like the one example I can think of an angel in the Bible that's totally like, I'm going to mess you up, So that is Rilke's vision of the divine. And I guess it begs the question, what is our vision? And do we need to go to the mountains, or can we stay at home? Well, that's for you to answer, dear listener, and for me as well. I would hazard a guess that in America we tend to, come on. The divine is definitely outside the house, right? Both in the sense that we have a Judeo-Christian background to our culture, the American culture. No matter where you come from, you're living in a place that has that as its background. Plus the quote-unquote wilderness, the natural areas of North America are seen as scary, frightening, dark, but also the abode of the divine. Again, mountains, the Rocky Mountains, We make these pilgrimages to national parks. I'm not making that word up. That's what people say, a pilgrimage to a national park. Pilgrimage, often a spiritual quest, right? And you go there and you observe, John Muir, the Scottish naturalist of Yosemite, amazing fellow. The wilderness was his church for him, absolutely so. Now, it's not to say that we're all like him, but I don't know, maybe we are. Walt Whitman and Emily Dickinson. Where are they? Let's get them in on this, huh? Are they on the panel? Drink some little water from a little plastic little water bottle there, you two, and tell me what you think. Yeah, I think Whitman's out on the fields, right? He's in the fields. He's in the forests, seeking contact with larger forces. Emily, however, she's different. She might be different. She might indeed find the divine right there, inside the dishes and in the glasses. That could very well be so. So let me give you this poem in German, just because what the heck, I speak German, I lived in Austria for a year. And here we go. Manchmal steht einer auf beim Abendbrot und geht hinaus und geht und geht und geht, weil eine Kirche wo im Osten steht. Und seine Kinder segnen ihn wie tot. Und einer, welcher stirbt in seinem Haus, bleibt drinnen wohnen, bleibt in Tisch und Glas, so dass die Kinder in die Welt hinaus zu jener Kirche ziehen, die vergaß. Now, if you're listening closely, you might notice a detail, some stuff there of the structure, which isn't quite happening in the English, Manchmal steht einer auf beim Abendbrot. Abend is evening, Brot is bread, evening bread. Und geht hinaus und geht und geht und geht. To gehen is to go. Ich gehe, I go. So that's what that is. And goes outside and goes and goes and goes. Weil eine Kirche wo im Osten steht. Osten being the east, Kirche being church. Weil being because. Because a church somewhere in the east state stands. Und seine Kinder segnen ihn wie tot. And his children bless him as though he were dead. Tot, T-O-T, dead. Feel the dead stop in that word there. Und einer, welcher stirbt in seinem Haus, and another who dies inside his house, bleibt drinnen wohnen. You hear that wonderful music there, like to stay inside. Drinnen is inside, wohnen is to live. Those sounds sort of curl up on themselves, almost in a little ball. Bleibt drinnen wohnen. Bleibt in Tisch und Glas. Stays in dish and glass. So dass die Kinder in die Welt hinaus, so the children in the world out go, hinaus, zu jener Kirche ziehen, die vergaß, to that same church which he forgot. So what's interesting is it rhymes in German, and it has a rhythm, right? We've got Abendbrot and Tod. We've got Gate and State. Haus und Glas hinaus vergaß, So it's a rhyming poem, and this translation, which I read to you, which is a combo, a mashup of Mr. Robert Bly and myself. It's all him, basically. It's all him, bless him, lovely teacher man, Robert. But I've tweaked it in a few places. I just thought it could be a little better, so I tweaked it a little bit. I don't know if you need to know all those tweaks, right? Robert doesn't say that he dies, and I thought that was crucial information, so I added it. Robert has, and another man who remains inside his own house stays there, inside the dishes and in the glasses, so that his children have to go far out into the world toward that same church which he forgot. And I changed it, of course. Another man who remains inside his own house dies there, amid the dishes and the glasses, so that his children have to go far out to find that same church which he forgot. I'm just letting you under the hood of the car, what's this for if it's not, you got the poem in the first 5 seconds of this podcast, right? But now we're taking out the carburetor, we're shaking it around, and we're going to try to put it back together. Hopefully it still runs. Oh, man, because we got to get to this church in the East. That's all I know. Well, the American poet Robert Hass has written wonderfully about Rilke and about this poem as well in his book 20th Century Pleasures, which is published by the Echo Press, ECCO Press. There's an essay on Rilke, and Hass points out that Robert to me, like I've said before, he was my teacher and friend, so I call him Robert. But he's a public figure, so he's also Robert Bly. I don't know which to say. So he took this poem, which is very rhythmic and rhyming in German, and a little sing-songy, in fact, so that it almost seems trite, even to German speakers. He's made it, in Hass's words, vigorous and in free verse. And I think that's absolutely accurate. Robert has given this poem a new life. In the German, it's a little Humpty Dumpty, it's definitely closer to Robert Frost, right? Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. What happens to that poem, the Robert Frost poem, if you were to translate it into free verse? Whose woods these are, I'm pretty sure, but I'm aware that he lives somewhere in the city. I know he won't see me while I'm standing here, watching his trees fill up with snow, right? What does it do to get rid of the rhythm and the meter? Anyway, so this poem in Rilke's career is a little bit facile, a little bit too easy in the way its rhymes come together, in the way its rhythms sound. It doesn't quite have the merciless spiritual sort of whack on the shoulder blades that I hear in the English. So I'm just saying that. But Robert has created a new thing. I guess the final thing to say is you're getting Rilke in Robert's translation, but you're also getting some of Robert Bly, and that's just the way it is. Nevertheless, I feel like it is a beautiful and a useful poem. And so he's made sort of a new thing, and I guess there's nothing too wrong with that, as long as you are aware of what's happening. As long as you are a listener to this podcast and you know the secret and you know what's going on and you hear that, well, Rilke is not, at this point in his career, a free verse poet. Even though he's celebrating getting outside of the house and breaking the structure and interacting with the divine way out there in the East, his poem is very sort of closed and So that's just something to know when you are appreciating this poem in English. And as I said, I think its gifts are clear in English, and it's a beautiful poem, which Robert has arrived at by means of Rilke. Perhaps we should put it that way. And I guess I would say I aspire to find that divine quality in the dishes and in the glasses. And like we have learned from the Greek epics, perhaps the divine can do both, because Zeus takes many forms, and he's there in the dishes and the glasses, and he's there outside, and Athena as well, and Persephone, all of them, there they are. They're present in our daily lives, and they're present out in the world. And sometimes we need to do one thing or the other to contact them. Sometimes it is correct, it is right to stay in the house. Sometimes it is correct, it is right to open that door and get outside. Well, these are questions which this poem asks of me and of us and of you, dear listener. May we, in our lives, continue to have the opportunity to ask such questions. Thank you for listening to this podcast. There are more podcasts on my website, which is jayleeming.com, JAYLEEMING.com. You will find the Odyssey on there. You will find the Mahabharata. You will find numerous fairy tales. Over 130 episodes, I think, about now, and a growing universe of poetry explorations as well for you. If you are able to support this podcast, please do so. You can do that at patreon.com/storyjl. Thank you for listening to this, and take care.